Hi, Christine. How are you today?
I'm doing really well.
And I'm delighted to have you here. I know we're going to have a great conversation, and our listeners are going to learn a whole lot of stuff.
Hmm.
Let me begin with a question. In your website, in your uh, personal information, you uh, label yourself as a quantum practitioner.
Hmm.
When you use the phrase quantum, what are you implying by that adjective?
Oh, so that comes from, I wrote a book called 10 Ways to Balance Your Brain Chemistry, where I have added a little segment in there, an extra book, a bonus book called Four Bodies, Four Medicines.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the, s- the primer to, I call it the quantum primer in what I learned from Quantum University. So I got my doctorate in natural medicine from Quantum University.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've heard of them, but it
Heard
was
of,
founded,
not
yeah, it's
familiar
founded
with. Yeah.
by Dr. Paul Druin, who was a doctor in Canada and was using biofeedback, which there is quantum biofeedback. So that works in metaspace. It's non-local medicine, basically. Like you don't have to be in the office. You
Mm-hmm.
could be across the world and still be treated, so to speak, in that kind of quantum field, I guess you could say. So that's kind of the really quick version of that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
If I, and please correct me where I'm misunderstanding this, as a quantum practitioner, you're referencing the lack of necessity for immediate proximity to your
That's
patient.
one factor, yes. So
Okay.
there's a quantum field that is non-local, that's the information field. And there's a medicine that can happen within that field. And very different than the physical, which is the first body, right? The
Hmm.
second body is the vital body, which when we talk about energy medicine, that's been kind of more, I don't know, explored, you could say, in the last few decades. That, we've got Reiki and we've got tapping. Like I'm a tapper, I've developed a version of EFT
Hmm.
to clear meridians. We've got, traditional Chinese medicine with acupuncture and this whole, like, oh my gosh, so many modalities, right? Around energy
Hmm.
medicine. And then we have mental medicine, which is the mind, the medicine of the mind, which is based on my master's in psychology, isn't necessarily a solution in itself, So psychology can focus still on the disease model, just like Western medicine can focus on the disease model. I talk about how I got into my psychology degree and they didn't want to hear about emotional intelligence. That was not what they
Right.
wanted to hear about. They wanted to hear about pathology. They wanted to look at diagnoses and classifications, but it was a disease model basis. And so,
Right. There are exceptions to that, but the prevailing uh, the standard of practice is still very physical based.
diagnostic and
Yeah.
what's wrong with the client patient.
Right.
So, positive psychology, I mean, definitely leans it the direction we want to see more of and focuses on how can we create wellness through the power of the mind. So that starts to move into the quantum field. So one way to kind of look at it is 3D medicine, as you can have a bottle and you can take a pill and you can get surgery. It requires being here in a physical form.
Hmm.
And 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 then energy medicine is working more with that unseen part of the body, which is the vital body. The mind can go forward and backward in time, and it can be elsewhere in space. We can be mentally on a beach somewhere, in the past or in the future, because the mind starts to have this freedom around the 3D realm. And then we
Hmm.
go even beyond that. So I would really say that quantum medicine is dimensional. So we're going into the 4D, 5D with the quantum medicine model. And you
Okay.
might
Well,
talk about that. You may have had some shows
but yeah, we
on
have
that.
to come back to that. But let me
Mhm.
ask you. We're talking a lot about the mind. What is your perception of a mind? What is a mind?
Well, it's a structure. Typically, we're dealing with the aspects of the ego in the mind. And so the ego is, the structure that we've developed through our life experience. But I think it even goes before this life, certain personality traits, and we carry stuff around, if you've looked at life between lives, so past life regressions, and then looking at like who is that person between lifetimes, I think there's still a mind, so whether or not we're in a physical form or we're in a spiritual form, there tends to be something about our personal experience and identity that is unique to us and doesn't even seem to require a certain body to be expressed or to be expressed. Yeah.
Okay, but that that doesn't really tell us what a mind is.
What the mind is.
You use a reference in your website or on your social media post in describing the subconscious mind as distinctly different from the um, functional mind. I forgot what you had how you had identified the what I'm
The
calling
conscious
the
mind.
functional
Yeah.
mind.
So in this life experience, in this moment, there's um, a sense of operation, right, in the mind. And that is what we're conscious of. We may know that, we might have some level of self-awareness and know what it is that's really going on in our mind. But I think the mind, there's so many layers, and again, there's a subconscious that we don't even know. They're saying that what we have a grasp on maybe 10% of what's going on in the mind. So the many
In the
layers.
mind or the brain.
Oh, I guess it's both. I haven't really tapped into everything the brain is capable of, but you don't have to have a brain to have a mind, is kind of what I'm seeing, because
Yeah.
it's definitely something that I think if you've done talks on near death, obviously there's a mind there with the body detached. So, yeah.
Okay. Have you done much research with people that have experienced NDEs, or
Oh,
have you?
yes. I love
Okay.
NDEs. Yeah. Do
Okay.
you want to hear my favorite near death experience
Sure.
story? So, so I was actually at a writer's retreat when I met this man. His name is Vincent Tolman. And so I met him before his book came out, and I got to know him fairly well and got some really good, kind of pre-launch material from him and that type of thing, and heard his story. But he was in a Dairy Queen, I think it was, and it was years ago, it was like 17 or more years ago, that he had taken it was a supplement, like a weightlifting supplement. It came from China or something, and they couldn't read the label, and it was a concentrate. They didn't realize it was concentrate.
I always read the
They
label.
had like 10, 100 times of what they were supposed to have. And he and his friend both like passed out, and were throwing up in this restaurant, but he was in the bathroom. So they were attending to the friend and getting, I think there was an ambulance there because of his friend. And then they realized that somebody had been in the bathroom for quite a while. The door was locked, and they had to get the door unlocked to find Vinny had already passed out. He was gone. He was not breathing. They pronounced him dead, and he was even zipped in a body bag before he came back. And they can record, they actually have, at least 45 minutes on record that he had, he was gone. Isn't that
Wow.
wild?
Okay.
So his story is he actually was able to um record, I mean, like he came back with a lot of information. I mean, there's a lot of information for people who've had 10-minute deaths, right? And so it's just vast. And what he shares is so cosmic, so other, many levels of advancement on the other side, and truths that just kind of, it's a powerful experience that he had. So Yeah, it's a good
But
one.
he still, in some summary, he still had a perception of himself. He
Well,
still,
yeah, so he was learning and he was advancing during this time. It's probably equivalent to weeks, in our, in our 3D world. So he advanced to different levels. He was able to see different realms, and kind of closer and closer to the source as he progressed through this journey. So pretty
so
amazing
it's
stuff. But
highly,
yeah,
highly,
his mind advanced in that experience, and that experience influenced him. So
okay. And you have created a meditation method that let me,
quantum
quantum
wholeness meditation.
meditation. Okay.
Yeah, do you want to hear
All
about
right.
that?
Yeah. Tell me about
That's a
that.
fun one. Okay. So first of all, I have been on my own advancing journey, my awakening journey, you could say. And I reached a point where I knew that there was something to the Eastern practices that had something to offer. And I began working with a former Buddhist monk about 10, 11 years ago. And Nithya Shanti was my teacher. And, in person, he happened to be visiting my little area. And I was able to really kind of just study with him and learn from him. And, what he taught me was very much, I would say quantum. I didn't know that's what it was. But the advancement I made, and in my mind, you could say this was a mental medicine for me. I was able to go from someone very resistant to stillness and silence to, and part of that journey was going into the zero. And so I talk about that in my book, Being at Zero. So in working with him, he asked me, the first thing he asked me when we began working together is, what was my greatest fear? And I told him, I said, it's that I would cease to exist. So as a child, I was afraid of black holes. I was afraid, so there's this something about the nothing that was very, the end of all, that idea that,
You mean the cosmic black hole, not a hole in the backyard?
no, like a cosmic black hole was just
Yeah.
frightening to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So this idea that it could just all be over, and we don't have control, and so that was what I shared with him. And the thing that was so interesting is he shared back with me, he says, well, if you ceased to exist, then what aspect of you would then be afraid? So basically he's saying, if your mind is gone, there's no mind in which to fear. And that definitely put me in a spot of like, well, isn't that interesting? You're right. Yeah. So it took me, it took me a moment to just kind of be like, okay, well, yeah, that's true. And then I settled in, I think, to the experience more. And I think that was part of my resistance, that stillness and silence somehow represented this nothingness that I felt was kind of, relevant, a mirror of that nothing, that ending, that ceasing to exist. And so it became a little less intimidating. And so I started meditating more. What was interesting though is I did really well until he went back to India. He went back to India and I just like thought, well, okay, now I can go back to living, like to what I was doing before. And I went into workaholic mode. So my extremes were kind of like do, and my fear was like, if I stop doing, then who am I, or what am I, or what's my value, right? So it's subconscious fears. And so I went into that doing mode, overdoing, and I put myself into a risk, a health risk. Basically, I'd been dealing with these reactions that were like allergic reactions to foods that I couldn't really even pinpoint what I was allergic to. I think the problem is that I was putting myself into fight flight mode rather than rest and digest. And my body was saying, you cannot think you're going to, eat on the run and this is going to work. So my body was saying, stop.
Hmm.
And so I went into one of these allergic reactions and I was actually unconscious for probably 3 hours.
Okay.
So, and I'd gone unconscious before. It's kind of a thing I do. It's part of this interesting makeup of me that, my fear takes me into faint. They talk about fight, flight, freeze, and there's faint. And that's my go-to, I guess. And so anyway, so I go into this unconscious state, like I'm fully passed out on the bathroom floor. And when I come to, all I can do is just this kind of guttural sound. I couldn't even form words and I couldn't move. And so I was actually carried to bed by family members. And then for about 24 hours, it took me an entire day to even get to a state of functioning. And so that changed me. And what it showed me is that if I think doing nothing is the problem, think again. It's, trying to do everything, trying to go, go, go and not stop, that could actually be my demise. So it changed my core beliefs to some extent. And I began choosing meditation and stillness and silence instead of resisting it. And and through that, it was like there was a gift in it because I created my own version of this. That was the same spring. Within about a month or two, I enrolled in Quantum University. So it was like the universe was trying to get my attention and trying to move me in a certain place. And I had to just stop running
Mm-hmm.
to be more receptive. And so I was moved into Quantum University and I was moved into a practice of meditation. And I actually studied one of the first influences of quantum wholeness meditation, besides all of this, was Frank Kinslow's quantum entrainment. So I don't know if you've heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
You have, yeah. He wrote a book called The Secret of Instant Healing, and it was actually the monk came back after all this had happened and was at a. I actually
Can
hosted a retreat.
chastise you for forgetting all the good stuff that he taught you.
Oh yeah. He did return. He had kind of found a following in our community, and so it was lovely. He came back and I was like better than I'd been, but I still hadn't quite gotten it, because I went into that doing mode to host his retreat. So I was like overworking again and thinking too much about the things that probably didn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
and not settling into the retreat experience itself. And so I ended up having another one of those allergic reactions while I was hosting. So that wasn't good.
No, I
So I'm
imagine
laid
not.
out on a couch, and one of the other retreat members came over to me and could see me going into this. I mean, my face was red and puffy. I couldn't breathe. I was sweating. My fingers were swelling. This anaphylactic shock was coming on again. And she said, "Would you allow me to support you? Can I put my hand on your knee?" And I'm like, sure. Um, but this was where the miracle started. So I started to feel the swelling in my head go down and the pounding go down, and I could breathe freer, and my temperature reduced, and my sweating reduced. And I started to feel like it's going away. And this was the first time I hadn't gone into unconsciousness. So I actually became conscious, you could literally say, in the process. And later everybody was like, "You're just glowing, you look so good. This retreat's doing so well for you." I'm like, I don't even know what happened. And she said, "Would you like to know what that was?" And I had just assumed she was a healer of some sort. She said that she had just done quantum entrainment. And she explained this is Frank Kinslow's, you know, process of accessing consciousness and using consciousness to heal. And so she was not the healer. She just used consciousness. And it was just like, I was an instant fan. So got his book, started studying that. And then adding some other things to it. Power of Eight, like Lynn McTaggart's Power of Eight came out, I think, a couple years later.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already started doing, basically groups of about, half a dozen people. I still do them today. Miracles and meditation groups where we essentially study these principles, and then it became where we used quantum wholeness meditation as group intention to provide healing. And so it's just a mix of some of these things, and it became just kind of a structured 9-minute meditation. And so typically I do it with people, but whether that's with one client or in a group setting, there's power in numbers with it. And so there's something to that gathering.
Well, you certainly you create a protective shield and focus
Well, I think
more
it's even a
energy.
multiplication of the power of it. So,
So, in your practices and in your experiences, what have you determined is the source of uh, illness? What is illness, and what are we healing?
mm. So I am a student of A Course in Miracles. And so in that, I guess, belief system, the illness and the disease and that type of thing isn't the truth. It is the illusion. It is
Distortion.
the false aspect of this realm that we are
Distortion.
affected by. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the distortion of who we are. And so the healing is remembering that we are part of the one. I mean, like, yeah, to come back to your your title, we're part of that capital O, the oneness that is our source, and our unconsciousness I use a capital C with, because I feel like it expresses that.
Hmm. Okay. And what is healing?
So healing is a return to that remembering, to that oneness, and that can be physical, emotional. I mean, that's where I kind of look at the 4-prong, like I do a wellness diamond. So physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And I think that's the unfortunate situation with some of our Western medicine and what Western mental health model is, that it's not whole and complete. It's, you know, compartmentalizing. Well, we'll fix the body over here, we'll fix the mind over here, and then go to church, and really, you laugh. Are you familiar with that model?
Yes.
Yes. Really, the healing is the whole. It is bringing the body. It's the 4 bodies, bringing the body, and really that wellness diamond is the 4 bodies. It's the physical, emotional, which would be vital body, mental, and spiritual, which is the quantum, and saying all those layers are who we are. And so Amit Goswami is a professor with Quantum University, and he explains it is like there's a top down or a bottom up. So bottom up is that we try to do the healing by fixing the body, by fixing that most dense layer of the
Hmm.
bodies, going to a doctor, getting a pill, this 3D thing, and then hoping that we climb beyond that. And the quantum model, or the top down, is influence the spiritual or the quantum layer first, and it drops down into the denser bodies as a solution. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. The concept of the mind is an interesting concept, and there's certainly multiple layers of minds. And I think what you and I are using right now is something that we created with this incarnation.
Mm.
It's a hierophant. It's a false perception of self that we create that allows us to enjoy the opportunities for experience that our incarnational experience provides us in order to fulfill part of the curriculum that we have to complete in order to advance through the range of consciousness that we experience and graduate from this range of
Mm.
experience. And
That was really well said. I actually use the term conscious curriculum. You just explained what that is. That's
yeah,
awesome.
well,
Yeah.
there is a definitive curriculum for each range of consciousness, this particular range of consciousness is the most structured because it is foundational and we are very embryonic in our evolutionary process. We're actually third from the bottom of 8 layers.
Mm.
And so we are in each layer, beginning with our layer. The two before us are considered foundational layers, and they don't have the potential in order to assume responsibility for their evolution. The first layer is what we would perceive to be inorganic matter, but it's still consciousness. The second layer is plants and animals, which enhances the first layer and is a necessary um, ingredient for our range of consciousness to exist. So every planet begins with the first layer, and as it matures and develops, um, well, as a physicist would design the rules of the road, the rules of nature. Um, and the second layer enhances that, but it's totally unique. There's no requirement that it has the same life ingredients that we experience on Earth. Um, and then our range of consciousness has a very definitive curriculum, but as consciousness is expanded and creation is structured, 5 inherent characteristics of the creator become delineated. They are very much the uh, part of the creator, but they're not delineated until we begin to proliferate the structure of creation. Our range of consciousness that we are tasked with becoming in order to prepare to graduate for the next layer is awareness. And what you're describing through your experiences is your experiential exploration of awareness. That is what meditation is, why meditation is such a useful tool for healing as well as our advancement along the enlightenment path, is it requires us to invert our awareness and become aware through us, in us, those aspects of us that perpetuate our experience of stress and or potentially suffering, and to institute the healing that is afforded by our surrendering of that. But all of creation is made possible by a distortion, and all of creation is a distortion. And the first distortion that made creation possible is free will, which is a misunderstood concept. It's not, we perceive it to be the choice to turn right or to turn left or whatever, but that's the product of free will. Free will is the perception of separation.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Free will is the perception of separation.
Right.
That's amazing.
So
Okay.
the farther down in the structure of creation that you go, which we are far down, we significantly perceive ourselves as separate from each other
That makes
as well
sense.
as from the creator. So the whole
Hmm.
process of healing and the whole process to afford those opportunities that you're describing through quantum entrainment or whatever entanglement are nothing more than the whole process of enlightenment is surrendering from that free will intoxication, because
Mm.
free will acts as an intoxicant.
Yeah.
The more intoxicated you are with whiskey, the more you do stupid things that you wouldn't
Hmm.
do if you weren't
Yeah.
intoxicated with whiskey. And free will has the same effect on consciousness.
Hmm.
So higher consciousness simply is consciousness that has sobered more significantly from that free will intoxication, and that
Fascinating.
their capacities, when you're talking about the capacities for quantum healing and so forth, all that's doing is marshaling those um, um, inherent characteristic aspects that are still part of us, but we're learning to focus our awareness on bringing that higher consciousness into bear to affect healing. But still, it's up to the individual. We don't have the capacity to heal others yet. We won't have that until the next range of consciousness. But we
Mm.
can provide the circumstances in the environment for the person to become aware and affect their own healing.
Yeah. I love
So
working with healers. Yeah. In fact, part of the book, um, they're a bunch of contributors that have all got kind of their own approach to healing. And what's lovely is when we find what we all have in common.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
finding that unity within our own expression
hmm,
of, how we have, it's our own life experience typically,
right,
like our pain, our what we've overcome that becomes the basis for the healing we offer others.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's only it is awareness that allows us to and our predisposition toward certain aspects of the mind, which is the mind is nothing more than a bundle of beliefs.
Hmm.
That's all it is. It becomes the
Yep.
lens that we use to interpret our experiences. And so, consequently, as our mind becomes less burdened with constricting beliefs, we allow ourselves to um, employ that awareness to affect greater healing in others by virtue of modeling it
Yeah.
for them. I don't know if are you familiar with Ram Dass, Richard
Yes.
Alpern,
Hmm.
in his uh, wisdom, he determined that in working with his clientele, with his patients, the most effective thing that he could do to affect healing is to maintain his higher vibrational level and require the patient to come up to his level rather
Oh yeah.
than
Goes to their level.
than
Hmm.
any conversation or anything else that he could do, that allowing that patient's vibration to escalate and through their own awareness affect the healing within themselves that they
Wow.
desired.
That is
So
really cool. I may use that.
yeah, please do.
Because
It's not mine.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's well, and it's so perfect for, I talk about I have something called frequency school, and I
Hmm.
talk about a frequency model, which it's basically levels, 7 levels of, I guess you could say, advancement to higher
Hmm.
levels, which seventh I call the oneness, because I get this. It's like a pyramid, right?
Hmm.
And based on Dr. Hawkins, you're probably familiar
Right.
with Power
Yeah,
versus Force.
David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He talks about, you got your bottom realm that's, 100 frequency, and there's a massive amount of people there. And then you got your average, which there's a lot more people under a 300 than there is
Right.
over a
Right.
300. But then there's this counterbalance that gives you some hope, because he's saying that the higher the frequency, the more impact, it's exponential, that you have to kind of trickle down. So it's a top down approach.
Right.
Like if we just have one, I've heard this, like a Buddhist monk in a community like I had in mind, it raises the frequency of that, of thousands of people, just
Hmm.
to have them present,
Yeah.
and holding that frequency.
Yeah. We perceive it as frequency, but frequency is actually a time measurement.
Oh,
and
okay.
is vibration, because
Vibration. That
vibration
makes
is
sense.
independent of any sort of time measurement, because all of
Okay.
creation
I
is
did not know that
variety
too.
by vibration.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. So
Yeah, and
vibration is not time constrained, whereas frequency is something that you could measure more or
yeah,
have a.
well, frequency by its very definition is a cycles within a time measurement. But when you don't have a time measurement, then it has no relevance, but it still has vibration.
Wow. So it's 5D. I don't know how that works, but anyway. Yeah.
Well, those are those nomenclatures are misnomers. We're in third density,
Third
and
density.
we're
Yeah.
we're anticipating graduation to fourth density. Fourth
Which
density
is
is
an interesting.
dramatically higher than what our level of we're as a population we're still
Yeah.
in the lower echelons of the range of consciousness that we share. So,
See, and it's so interesting because knowing that there's a shift coming, and I think even religions talk about something's coming, right? Change is coming, planetary, global advancement, you could call it.
mhm.
And it's been framed around something that's kind of scary, right? Armageddon kind of stuff. So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, does it have to be something to fear?
Well, fear is anything that we don't like,
Okay.
and which is that is stress, and stress is a spectrum. If you're used to drinking cream in your coffee in the morning, you forgot to stop at the store last night to get cream, so you have to drink coffee black. That's stress, but it's very minor. The opposite end of the spectrum is something that we would interpret as a trauma. And the
Trauma.
only reason that it is traumatic is that stress is anything that challenges the authenticity of our perception of self, our identity that you were referring to, our identity, our hierophant, our ego. It's all the same thing. And so we don't like that. But actually, stress is our teacher because
Mm,
it is giving us the opportunity to become inwardly aware of what it is that we've created that's perpetuating our experience of stress.
so, a big one for people probably is money as a source of
Big time.
identity,
Well, because
economy.
it it challenges some pretty basic concepts that we have the right to live at a certain standard of living, food and shelter and so forth. And
Mm,
so, yeah, it is foundational. But in the folks that I work with, the primary, I strive to get them to foundational conditions of being that limit their capacities to function in their world, and almost overwhelmingly, in some form or fashion, the foundational belief is unworthiness,
oh,
or
wow.
I'm not
Mhm.
good enough, I'm not worthy, whatever phraseology works. But that basic consideration that they really have no perception, they have no concept of who they are, which gets back to what you were saying. They have no concept of the oneness, and the
Mhm.
reality is they are, and we are. Everyone is the one infinite creator experiencing itself at this range of consciousness,
Mm,
and yet that is so intimidating for people to vocalize because they were taught primarily by religion that that's a taboo, that that's
mm.
ego, that's the wrong attitude to have. But once you surrender those beliefs that prohibit you from thinking that, from understanding that, that's tremendously liberating. And not only liberating, it is humbling.
Yeah.
And so it's not an enhancement of the ego, it's a surrendering of a significant portion of the ego.
So, yeah, what you're describing sounds like A Course in Miracles. Have you studied that?
I've read it. It doesn't appeal that I um, and a teacher and an advocate of the law of one,
Okay.
and the
It's just a different approach, maybe, to similar truth, but
it is the Course in Miracles is capitalization, and it supposedly, I don't know whether it is. It was supposed to be channeled by the spirit that was Jesus, and Jesus at the time of his incarnation was a fourth density entity that was delivering a specific message of love, which is our range of consciousness is tasked with becoming awareness. The next range of consciousness is tasked with becoming love.
mm,
But love is a misunderstood concept to us
hmm,
because it's foreign. It's not an emotion. It is a condition of being, just like awareness is a condition of being. And so, and it is an unbalanced condition of being in the process of evolution. The next range of consciousness is the exploration of love and the becoming of that condition of the inherent characteristic of the creator. But it's healing what we experience in this range of consciousness.
mm,
The next range of consciousness is the modifier for the exuberance that we achieve by becoming love, the next range of consciousness is wisdom. So the wisdom
Okay.
balances the distortion of the exuberance of the love that healed the distortions of perception of awareness.
Fascinating.
So
And do you have a book on this?
I do. Just coincidentally, funny you should ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me about your book.
Well, I've got four books, and the compendium work that I explain all of the structure of creation and the design of our experience, which there is a design that we function under called the archetypical mind. It's a blueprint for how we process thought. And so it goes through the process to require us to create this hierophant with every incarnation. And it explains the nature of the experience of what happens when we create this identity. So
Fascinating.
uh, it's helpful, and it isn't uh, kind of a simplification of the raw material. If you're familiar with the raw material, which is a series of channelings that the entity raw RA, which is the same
Raw.
entity that was
Yes.
that was
R-A.
prominent in Egyptian times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Actually, Ra is the inherent characteristic of the creator of love,
Okay.
and Ra and Law is the inherent characteristic of wisdom, and those
Okay.
two entities are principally responsible for creating the nature of the earth of for the earth experience.
Mm. Wow.
So anyway, we got off track. We were talking about you.
This was so interesting. Thank you for sharing about you too. So
Well,
back on track. So
that,
yeah, so I ended up having these powerful experiences, created quantum wholeness meditation,
mm-hmm,
used it in variety of ways. The one I did my dissertation on
mm-hmm,
is when I had a couple in conflict so bad that their 8 months of marriage therapy before they came to me, the
mm-hmm.
marriage therapist finally just suggested they separate and was done. He didn't want to see him again. So
Okay,
that was that. And they couldn't just be done. They were raising 5 children. They couldn't afford 2 households. They were
right.
committed to their religious vows, and there had to be a way. And um, so I started working with the wife who was a PTSD victim. And that was a huge part of the conflict, is that she
Mm-hmm,
wasn't safe. So we used some of these quantum tools, 0 point meridian, different things to bring her into a state of limbic management.
mm-hmm.
And then my co-therapist met with him, came out of the session saying, I never want to be in the room with that man again. So like, oh,
Okay,
okay, we haven't solved
that
all the
that didn't go
problems.
well.
And I went home that weekend and just in prayer, it was like, show me how to do this. And I was given a structure to use quantum wholeness meditation in a couples model.
Cool.
So that first session we had together, we interrupted the pattern they repeated for 8 months with the other marriage therapy. And
Mm-hmm.
so at the end, they were like, oh my gosh, for the first time, like that changed more in that one session, than the
Cool.
8 months.
Yeah.
And so it's
So did you take
interrupting those mental patterns and perceptions and creating space for love is really kind of what's going on there.
what allowed that interruption? What was it that allowed that interruption? What
It
changed in
was
them?
pausing, using consciousness to fill in the gaps. So it was structuring the session to get them to stop their automatic,
Mm-hmm.
interactions. And we meditated multiple times during the session. And so in using, and it wasn't 9 minutes every time, it was like 3 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
just enough to pause and create space in their programming, like I said, to bring in consciousness, which that the consciousness of quantum wholeness meditation is, well, it's referenced, I nicknamed it the meditation for the Eastern mind. So it's like you're
Mm-hmm.
silencing the mind and the Christian heart. And so opening up to love. And so it's both. It's like the perception gets clear and the love expands, and just that stillness, just that surrender to a higher influence, to that higher, like you're saying, the Ram Dass thing, it's like
Hmm.
the higher vibration comes in and does the healing. I mean, there's so many things going on we don't even know, right? With that source influence, but
Well,
it allows for it.
understanding that the authentic self, or is Jung called it the true self, needs no healing. That is our spirit, and so it's not a matter of gaining anything. It's a matter of getting rid of stuff. And so the any what we perceive to be healing is the surrendering of those beliefs that we've incorporated. Well, two things: the learning the lessons that were brought to us that we call emotional baggage, that we didn't learn at the time that we had the experience. That is strategic. But also, two, surrendering those beliefs that are the magnet. We perceive that we create experiences. We don't have the capacity to create experiences yet. We're magnetic. We attract the
Mm.
experiences. And so,
Yes, we're
what,
magnetic. I like it.
yeah. So whatever we're experiencing is highlighting what within us we need to become aware of and surrender.
Ooh, can I
Because,
throw in a cool quantum thing?
sure.
So before I went to Quantum University, I was trying to make sense of like, what is this thing that I don't understand that I want to understand? And I
Hmm.
actually went on Wikipedia and was finding, um, I was trying to sort through the science of quantum
Hmm.
physics. And I learned that there are a number of natural laws. Okay, so laws of the universe kind of thing.
Hmm.
And there's two of them that have an infinite range and a 0 point limit. Okay, so two natural laws of the universe have an infinite range and a 0 point limit. So one of those is gravity. So what is the 0 point limit of gravity? It's zero gravity, right? We know about this. We've
Hmm.
shown it with our astronauts, that type of thing, right? What's infinite gravity? I believe it would be a black hole. Okay, so you have this weight, this, pressure, whatever you want to call it, the gravity coming in on itself to where it doesn't stop. So that's what scared me, right? It's this infinite
Hmm.
gravity, most likely. Okay, so that's one. The other one is the electromagnetic field. So when you said magnetic, I was like, oh, yes, I know this. Okay, so what is a 0 point limit with an electromagnetic field?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. See if you-
Um, well, actually, I would say it would be the same as the infinite field.
Well, it's a dead body.
Well,
So a dead body would have a 0 point limit on the electromagnetic field. So this, what was, a vibration, a life force energy is now gone. And all that's left is the 3D, okay, without the life force energy. Does that make sense?
hmm.
So that conceptually would be the 0 point limit of an electromagnetic field. So an electromagnetic field is around every living thing, even like rocks have a certain
Right.
electromagnetic field, right?
Yeah.
But when you take all the life force energy out of something and just leave a shell of nothingness behind, that's where it would be a 0 point limit. But what would be the infinite range of an electromagnetic field?
Well, the presumption of the origins of creation.
Yeah, so a divine being, like a resurrected or whatever belief system you may have, but a god, a right, a source with a capital S that doesn't
Uh,
ever run out, so to
yeah.
speak. Yeah.
Well, because there's no beginning and no end.
Yes. And so really seeing it from that higher realm, you recognize the dead body isn't really real. It's just this
It's a
dimension. And
concept,
so the truth is that
and
whatever
we're
was
we're all
real
concepts too.
is infinite. Yeah.
Yeah, but just uh, fill in your concept of a black hole. A black hole is created when a sixth density entity transitions to seventh density.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
What
it's
book is that in?
taking with it the sixth density, sixth, seventh, and eighth densities are creator being densities.
Wow.
And sixth density is principally responsible for creation of all that we experience.
Oh my
Seventh
goodness.
density has turned back towards the creator, and so in that transition is taking the what we would define as energy with it to
Wow.
consolidate back to the creator.
Is that in a book?
It's in the raw material.
In
Yeah.
the raw material? Wow. Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
I haven't delved into that yet. So I,
Okay.
yeah, there we go. That's my assignment.
Well, it's in my book too.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, fun stuff. I've enjoyed our chat. I hope that you
Yes.
have.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited for you with all the stuff that you're doing. I think you are absolutely contributing to the benefit of the population, spiritually and physically and mentally. So sig- greatly applaud all that you're doing and wish you the absolute best.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Well,
It almost feels like a blessing to what I'm doing. Thank you so much.
yeah, just
Yeah.
keep doing it and just keep learning and growing and keep doing good things. Is
Thank
it
you.
any of the words of wisdom that you would like to leave our listening audience before we depart?
Oh goodness. Let's see.
Put you on the
The
spot again.
Yeah, on the spot, something really deep. So yeah, so just in the subtitle, I mean, it's the experience I had with zero is just like
Mm-hmm.
we're saying, like just like death is not the end.
Right.
It allowed for a divine spark to ignite, and I think that's what I would say is like, don't be afraid of, just being silent, being
Right.
still, not doing, not worrying about being enough or doing enough. So that humility that comes with just surrendering and just being as you are is where divinity can reach you and
Right.
and teach you.
Yeah. And understand you're enough.
Yes. Yes, very much
Yeah.
so.
All right. Christine, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate you being with us and sharing all that you've shared with us, and I'm sure our listeners will benefit from it greatly. And if you would hang on for a minute, I'm going to click us off of the record and we can chat for just a minute afterwards.
Okay.